Tattoos are cultural phenomena, which can be found in almost every part of the world. For some, they are the embodiment of art, fashion, or a means of self-expression. In El Salvador, however, a country marked by its high levels of crime, tattoos often serve as poignant reminders of a person's sometimes checkered past. These tattoos signify a time in their lives when they were susceptible to some of the less than positive influences in our world, leading them down paths they may now regret having followed. They remind us that poverty often plays a significant role in leading people into crime and even violence.
Con H, homogéneas, tilde en la E, 9%, coma.
This small classroom in the Chalatenango Provincial Prison in the northern part of El Salvador is overcrowded and filled with the smells of sweat and uncomfortably close proximity to others. Something the male inmates here have in common are their tattoos. Letters, numbers, crosses, or human face tattoos adorn every part of their bodies, from forehead to shins. These permanent markings are the very symbols that led to their arrests and incarceration here. These men are members of criminal gangs, and their tattoos declare affiliations and loyalty to their particular gang. Each design has a specific meaning. For instance, teardrop tattoos on the face symbolize involvement in murder, while a cross tattoo in the middle of the chest signifies mourning for the loss of a fellow gang member. Tattoos depicting a long-haired woman often serve as visual reminders of their loved ones. Moreover, the dots tattooed on their bodies sometimes represent the number of people they've killed, or the number of times they've been imprisoned. The more tattoos one has, the deeper the involvement, and the higher the rank within the gang one is likely to hold. Both the designs and the quantity of tattoos serve as warnings or threats to anyone who is considering challenging them. These permanent markings also betray one's identity, however, making it easier for police to identify and apprehend gang members. Additionally, once released from prison, these tattoos can become a threat. Nelson is a former member of Mara Salvatrucha, more commonly known as MS-13, one of the largest gangs in El Salvador. He now reflects on his tattoos with regret, as he's no longer affiliated with the gang. To him, each tattoo symbolizes a youthful misstep. He admits that at a young age he lacked experience and knowledge, making him susceptible to negative influences and deception by others. He now repents those choices and is seeking help to remove his tattoos. Valnich, a former national leader of the Mara Salvatrucha, or MS-13, recounts his story. When he arrived in California at the age of 15, he became involved in gang life. He believes that if someone had advised him against joining gangs at that vulnerable age, he would not most likely have followed that path. Moreover, he wouldn't have had the gang insignia etched into his body. After being incarcerated, many former gang members want to break away from the gang subculture to start a new life, but their tattoos pose a major obstacle. Having tattoos makes them targets for attacks from rival gangs or their former gang if they're attempting to disassociate. El Salvador has one of the highest crime rates in the world. Between 2014 and 2017, there were 20,000 murders. The peak was in 2015, with 6,656 homicides. That's approximately 106 per 100,000 of the population. Most of these deaths were criminal gang-related. The largest gangs are MS-13 and Barrio 18, with a combined membership of over 70,000. They are involved in virtually every kind of illegal activity, from drug and human trafficking to extortion. Armed security forces on every street corner are a common sight in the capital, San Salvador. Yet people still feel unsafe. Many business owners, if they wish to stay alive, have to pay protection money to the gangs. Rigoberto Hernandez, owner of a bus line, regards the gang issue as very perilous, especially given that his business hours start as early as 4 a.m. He emphasizes how quickly these gangsters can turn to violence, forcing others to pay just to survive. 70% of businesses in El Salvador are coerced into paying protection, which typically ranges between $5 and $50 per month. But one must ask exactly what or whom they are paying to be protected from. Because the fact is that the pervasive lawlessness and insecurity stem primarily from the criminal gangs themselves, the ones offering the so-called protection.
If you want to see more great content from all over the world, please like the video, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. Thank you.
A melodic voice is raised, reciting verses from the Bible. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. People stand up, listening in solemn silence before the time of celebration begins. This event remembers the signing of a landmark truce in 2012 between the two gangs, MS-13 and Barrio 18. The peace didn't last long, perhaps proving that there really is no honor among thieves. Inspector Perez Reyes, in charge of Majucla sector, is adamant that police officers had nothing to do with the truce. It was an agreement strictly between the gangs themselves. The inspector has, however, sadly concluded, given the alarming rise in homicides, that the truce is now over. In 2015, the resurgence in gang warfare led to a significant escalation in murder cases. The violence erupted after 14 members of the Barrio 18 were murdered while doing time in prison. Sanchez Seren, the president at the time, decided to declare a state of emergency. High-ranking gang members were transferred to maximum security prisons to cut off communication with gang members outside. Additional security measures were taken to combat gang violence, including deploying the military. Later, in mid-2015, 7 bus drivers were killed after defying the gang's order to shut down public transportation in San Salvador. This attempt and the related carnage served as stark messages to the government to cease their crackdown on gang activities. The incident caused widespread panic among bus drivers who were no longer prepared to put themselves at risk. Consequently, Salvadorans had to resort to alternative modes of transportation, such as hitching rides on pickup trucks or military jeeps, making an already risk-filled existence even more hazardous. The pall of fear blanketing every neighborhood is the reason many choose to seek refuge elsewhere. They yearn for a safer place that offers employment and promising futures in which their children can thrive. And the destination of choice has become the United States. Jose Martin Alas, a resident of the Las Margaritas neighborhood, tells us that he believes that El Salvador is facing a crisis. A growing number of young people are turning to a life of crime. The reason, he says, is because there are simply not enough job opportunities in the country. Noah Bullock, the executive director of the NGO Cristosal, explains that in 2018, 5% of the population responded to a survey stating their willingness to leave their home country due to insecurity. Were this percentage extrapolated to the entire population, it would equate to nearly 230,000 people. The government should be very worried about this statistic because it raises concerns about the extraordinary level of violence in the country. In 2016 alone, the influx of Salvadoran migrants to the United States peaked at a staggering 1.3 million. That's a fifth of the country's entire population. This massive wave of both legal and illegal immigrants increased the urgency to address the immigration issue in the United States, especially during the presidency of Donald Trump, whose campaign and administration actively championed anti-immigration policies.
John, go into the middle of the caravan, take your cameras and search. Okay? Search. Take your camera, go into the middle and search. You're going to find MS-13, you're going to find Middle Eastern, you're going to find everything. And guess what? We're not allowing them in our country. We want safety.
Upon arrival in the United States, immigrants fleeing violence in their home countries like El Salvador used to be granted temporary protection status, or TPS. But not anymore. In 2018, during the Trump administration, the Department of Homeland Security announced the termination of this long-standing policy, which had provided protection for 17 years. Approximately 200,000 Salvadorans who had been shielded by TPS were required to return to their homeland by the end of 2019. For many who had hoped to start new lives, their dreams were quite simply shattered. Ironically, the United States, often perceived as a safe haven, is the very birthplace of the criminal gangs that plague El Salvador. Between 1981 and 1992, the civil war between leftist rebel groups and government forces resulted in millions of Salvadoran refugees fleeing for their lives to start anew in the United States. The city of Los Angeles housed the largest number of Salvadoran refugees. Faced with harassment as outsiders in their new country, young boys decided to band together for protection. This sense of unity evolved into a gang culture, characterized by tattoos, hand signs, and the establishment of their own rules. As a result, gang membership grew rapidly. In the late 1990s, the United States government implemented more stringent immigration policies. This coincided with the end of the civil war in El Salvador, leading to the deportation of many Salvadorans living in the US, including gang members. The current predicament of Salvadoran immigrants resembles a recurring nightmare. Unlike the widespread impacts felt during the Civil War, though, today it is the impoverished who bear the brunt of gang violence. Tragically, those without means are often the first victims, as they lack the resources to protect themselves. Upon closer inspection, the tattoos adorning this man's chest, a human face and skulls, revealed the letters M and S, which symbolize his affiliation with MS-13. Jose is the owner of these tattoos. Having spent 14 years behind bars, he no longer wants the symbols that once manifested his allegiance to the criminal gang. This former Mara Salvatrucha gang member believes retaining those tattoos will only bring more problems in the future. First, visible tattoos make it extremely difficult to secure employment. Second, societal discrimination against individuals with tattoos is prevalent. Third, the presence of tattoos often leads to heightened scrutiny and conflicts with authorities, and they also have the potential to provoke conflicts with rival gangs. Removing tattoos is often a crucial first step for former gang members seeking to transform their lives. Without doing so, these markings could imperil their safety and impede their ability to begin their new life. Jose is among the hundreds of former gang members benefiting from free tattoo removal services offered by a government clinic in San Salvador. Remarkably, this service extends beyond gang members. The clinic warmly welcomes individuals from diverse backgrounds, including former sex workers, labourers and citizens in general who seek to erase their past. In a country plagued by rampant crime, anyone with tattoos is likely to be stereotyped as being involved in criminal activities. The tattoo removal process uses a laser beam to break up the pigments embedded in the skin's layers into minuscule fragments that the body can eliminate. It can't be completely removed in a single session. Those seeking removal must undergo multiple sessions before the tattoos fade away entirely. They must endure considerable pain in exchange for freedom from stigma. Even so, before undergoing tattoo removal, these former gang members must demonstrate their commitment to change through the I Change program, a reintegration initiative. In this modest classroom, inmates learn about religion, handicrafts and even music as part of a program designed to reform behaviour. These skills not only offer hope, but also nurture aspirations and purposes in life. Moises, a former Barrio 18 gang member, tells us that God is doing great work in his life, and he believes that his Lord has placed him in this position to teach other inmates, so that they may become better people in the future when they leave the prison. Meanwhile, Alexis, a gang leader, describes this program as a form of social readjustment and a pathway to reintegrate into society. He says he acknowledges his past crimes and failures. Therefore, he comes here every day to strive for self-improvement through the I Change program and to learn new skills to facilitate his reintegration into society. It is an effort to begin tackling long-standing societal issues which are deeply entrenched in poverty and inequality. The majority of El Salvador's population are impoverished. This has been the primary driver of the gang culture's proliferation. With a lack of educational opportunities, many children here see no prospects in life beyond potentially joining a gang once they reach adulthood. Confronting such profoundly deep-rooted issues is never a simple or easy endeavour, but some are determined to take on this challenge. This clothing factory in La Libertad province is taking a risk that many businesses won't, employing a significant number of former gang members, many of whom still bear visible tattoos. For these ex-gang members, there were traditionally only 3 places that seemed to accept them: prison, hospital, or the grave. Today, though, they have a 4th option: this factory, where they're offered a chance to start new lives. Carlos Argueta, a former gang member, is one who has seized that opportunity. Starting as a regular worker, he's been promoted to a managerial position. Carlos, now the manager of the League of Central America Garment Factory, tells us that 95% of gang members want to leave that lifestyle. He believes that if they're offered a path where they are assured they can succeed, they will take it. The path to education, particularly higher education, transforms their lives. In 2019, El Salvador welcomed a new president, Nayib Bukele, the former mayor of San Salvador. And like previous leaders, Bukele promised that the criminal gang problem would be brought to an end. The new leader's strategy to uproot criminal gangs includes destroying their financial hubs and cutting off communications from prisons, where many of their leaders are confined and continue to issue commands. After starving the gangs of resources, the next step is development, revitalizing communities and education. The goal is for children to envision their futures in positive roles, such as teachers, doctors, business people, or even programmers, rather than seeing gang membership as their sole aspiration, as it was previously. Jorge Medrano, a Salvadoran, tells us about his expectations of the government: to grow the economy in a country that is not doing that badly and to eradicate the gangs. He thinks these 2 key issues are vital factors for the Salvadoran people. He hopes President Nayib will be able to do something. Meanwhile, Henry Menjivar, another Salvadoran, says that he'd like the president to develop reintegration support for gang members. He believes that people join gangs not only because they want to, but also because they lack jobs and opportunities elsewhere. President Nayib Bukele isn't the first Salvadoran leader to try to tackle gang violence, but his approach may be the most aggressive so far. Under his administration, a prolonged state of emergency was declared in 2022 to confront criminal gangs, resulting in a nearly 70% reduction in homicides across El Salvador in 2023. Human rights organizations have, however, criticized Bukele's crackdown, citing instances of torture, deaths in custody, and arbitrary detentions. The state of emergency also permits police to arrest and detain suspected gang members on site, without a requirement to provide legal representation or court approval for preliminary detention. Since its implementation, security forces have arrested around 75,000 suspected gang members, releasing 7,000 according to official data. Human rights groups have reported 190 deaths and over 5,000 other abuses related to the crackdown. The Central American University's Observatory of Human Rights questions the accuracy of official data, noting underreporting of violent deaths and a notable lack of transparency. The data excludes suspected gang members killed in clashes and deaths in state custody. The new leadership's policies may result in fewer people with tattoos, symbolizing association with gangs being visible, but they also prompt scrutiny from human rights organizations regarding sustainability and the economic impact of managing the incarcerated population, especially during times of economic crisis. The violent suppression of gang members by the state to the point of extermination may not be the right answer. The real answer may be found in going back to basics. That is, promoting opportunities and equality to address poverty, the root cause of violence. In a society drowning in violence and crime, like El Salvador's, it's inevitable that individuals veer off course and make misguided choices.